Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us is Ronell Hugh. He's a Group Manager of Adobe Experience Platform at Adobe, a Nasdaq-listed company, as well as a Nasdaq 100 constituent. We're going to learn about a remote workforce and how it's shifting the priorities of the Chief Information Officer and how they're reinventing themselves as virtual leaders. Ronell, thank you so much for joining us in what's certainly been unprecedented times in the markets that we serve. Tell us why you went out with this survey, how CIOs are using it, and what they're really focused on.
Yes, definitely. And Jill, thank you for having me today. And love to chat a little bit more about why we went out with this survey. So part of what we've been doing at Adobe is really focusing out on how we help CIOs understand and figure out how they drive customer experience. And one of the ways that we've done that is by developing what we've called the Adobe Experience Platform. Adobe Experience Platform is all around focused on bringing together data, massive amounts of data, and leveraging that data to help inform businesses, to provide additional insights, and also provide ways to increase experiences, like personalization of those experiences across enterprises. And so we recognize that a CIO has a significant role in this, given their priorities to make sure that all the technology they have within their organizations are working to help drive the business forward. And so part of the focus for us around the survey was really to engage, with the CIOs, and specifically we engaged with about 200 plus US CIOs within organizations that have more than 100 employees. And, we did this in mid-March, and the focus was around helping to understand what are their priorities, the things that they're focused on, and how do we make sure that we continue to help them drive their priorities around digital transformation, especially around personalization and increasing better experiences for their customers.
So what are the tech priorities?
Yeah, as we engage with these CIOs, some interesting things came about and the things that we saw. The first thing that we saw was CIOs they're focused in cybersecurity. They're making investments in this area. So cybersecurity, it's an organizational priority for many organizations. Specifically, what we saw is that 7 in 10 anticipated increased financial investments in this area, and 4 in 10 anticipated additional headcount. So you can see that, cybersecurity, especially in the day and age of data and how we use it, is critical for the CIO and how they make sure their organizations and their businesses are secure from a cyber standpoint. The other areas that that we saw around this as well is their investments and focus in public clouds and infrastructure, and then also in AI and machine learning. And so there's an increased focus in these areas. And they, shared through the survey that they see the opportunity to receive a financial boost from investing in these areas. So that's interesting to see, and that helps to play into the focus of how they drive better digital transformation in organizations, as well as better customer experiences. And so those are some of the areas that we saw specifically from the CIOs.
All right, Ronell, let's talk about the challenge of the massive pivot focusing on COVID-19 for Chief Information Officers as they dealing with the remote workforce. Was there a better way they could have been prepared? What are some of the challenges that you're hearing?
So over the last probably several weeks, as you can imagine, we engaged with a lot of enterprises, Fortune 500 companies, and I've had the opportunity to engage with companies across multiple industries, whether it's media and entertainment, retail, high tech. And, most of these organizations recognize the need to set up work remotely. One of the things we found out is that 84% of all of the respondents, and then from a small organization standpoint, 94% feel that having a remote workforce is important. And that kind of speaks to what we're seeing today as it relates to COVID-19. And then, interesting enough, when it comes to remote work, the biggest challenge that most CIOs are experiencing is around communication, right? Specifically, 53% of them said that's the biggest challenge they're experiencing. And so you can see the need to having additional technology that helps to drive better communication when you have a digital workforce. And so we continue to see tools being brought in to address some of those. So obviously, Adobe has some of those tools from helping to drive digital transformation, but there's other organizations that provide technology around how you have connect, like for example, we're using Zoom right now. And so, one of the things we see is that despite the crisis that they're in, half of the firms are still are actively hiring though too. And so many anticipate that they'll continue to hire as well, and continue to have a hiring cycle. Specifically, 47% see that as something that they continue to have during this COVID-19 and how they're seeing it and viewing it. And so it's interesting to kind of see their response and how they're continuing to focus on maintaining better remote workforce environments, providing tools for their organizations and to employees to make sure they can connect as they're remote, and then still focusing on how do they bring in talent to help drive their businesses forward.
Yeah, that's certainly encouraging to hear. Let's talk about women in IT. That was also a part of the study.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You know, I'm fortunate, and one of the women I get to work with is Andrew Barami, and she is the VP of engineering. And you know, I spend a lot of time talking to her. So when I saw the results from this, it made me think about her and her career and what she's been doing. And for the CIO survey, female team members represented, I think, a minority of direct reports. So slightly over 1 in 4 were represented. And so there's what we're seeing is that there's a higher proportion of female team members in smaller organizations, and specifically in healthcare organizations. And so CIOs have a ton of direct reports. You know, we're seeing on average that they have 21 direct reports, and they see the opportunity here to continue to engage with women in the workforce. So showcasing, you know, how they're incorporating and bringing them in. I think you'll start to see that a lot more as this field continues to grow. And as we continue to have a lot more parity. That's one of the things actually, just to address this, like when I think about Adobe, our CIO is a woman, and she is exceptional. She does a great job. And a lot of individuals within our organization across engineering and product, you'll see some of these leaders are women. And so Adobe has spent a ton of time focused on how do we actually drive this. And we continue to encourage that as we engage with our peers in various organizations, specifically our CIO, and working with other CIOs as we think about how do we increase the representation of women in not just CIO-related roles, but also in engineering and product type roles where they can influence the product and how it's being built and what it means for multiple types of individuals who are leveraging these technologies.
All right, Ronell, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Trade Talks.
Yes, Jill, thank you for having me today.
All right, you got it. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.